Welcome everybody. Today we're going to be going over the ab wheel rollout. In my opinion, it is one of the best exercise options for training your trunk. It is an extremely high challenge movement, particularly as you get into the more advanced variations. So as we go forward today, we're going to address a few key points. Number one, the overall technique of the movement. Two, common errors that arise as people do it. And then three, a progression to get to the standard ab wheel rollout. If you'd like us to cover more advanced variations in a future video, let us know down in the comments. As well, before we get into this, if you hit that like button, it helps out a ton. And if you enjoy this content, make sure to subscribe. We try to release at least one video every week. All right, so let's get into the base technique. Now, if you think about the ab wheel rollout, when we do the actual movement, we're trying to train the trunk muscles, particularly the abs. Their job is to resist extension. So they work really well when we get into this position and we maintain it. So that's one of the key pieces as we go forward. So when we get into our position, so typically we're gonna be doing it off our knees. We wanna get set up, and then you're gonna be thinking about maintaining a plank essentially. So if I were to actually be in a plank position, I'm gonna have my hips extended. I'm gonna be thinking to squeeze my butt and do a mini crunch and really brace my abs. And then if we were to change this more towards an ab wheel, I would have my arms extended. And then essentially, I'm in what would be an ab wheel rollout, but now I'd be holding onto the wheel and my arms would be moving. So if we start to progress to that, I'm gonna be using these guys today. I don't have a standard ab wheel. I just got these cool devices, but they function the same way. So I'm gonna set up, so you're gonna be here, and the first step is that we're gonna wanna come forward. So I'm keeping these under me as I set up, and I wanna get my hips extended. So I'm gonna be squeezing my butt, bringing my hips forward, and then thinking to do a mini little crunch to get my abs locked in. So then once I'm here, I'm gonna do the second thing of making sure my arms are straight. And I'm gonna roll out as far as I can control, and back up. So you can see I'm moving and maintaining my position throughout. So essentially acting like a kneeling plank with my arms pulling over. So a couple of common things that people will do in executing the movement that take away from that goal of really strengthening the abs to the full degree. Number one, they'll go through the movement and they'll have a big arch and their hips flexed. So as I do that, it makes it easier. It makes me feel like I'm really awesome at the movement, but in reality, it's taking away from maximally challenging your abs. So if your goal is to strengthen your midsection as much as possible, I'm really using more of my rectus femoris, more of my shoulder muscles, and not the full degree on my trunk. So, because if you look, when I'm here, I don't have that maximal lengthening position for the moment arm from my pivot point to challenge my abs. If I stay bent, I'll reduce that length. When I go further out, it increases the moment arm and my abs have to work harder. Whew. That second detail builds off that, and it's with the hip flexed. Some people will do a pretty good job where they come out, they roll out, but then when they come back in, they pull with their hips. Again, takes away from having to maintain with your abs, instead utilizes your hip flexors more to pull you in. When we stay out, we're again utilizing our midsection and our hip flexors statically, going out, and as I come back in, I have to maintain and fight with my abs to resist extending and wanting to pull back in. So it puts a much higher demand on your abs to do that. Now, the third detail that a lot of people will start to mess up is less of a big deal, but it's still an important consideration. And that's bending the elbows, particularly if you're not going very far out. If you're going really far out, it's common to bend your arms a bit, but if you're going this more restricted range, such as like here, and you're just going like this, you're really more doing a tricep press. If you're going really far out, you get to this top range, as you're up here, it's a little bit harder to not bend your elbows just because as you get into that top position, a lot of people are gonna find maintaining a totally straight arm could be a little uncomfortable on their shoulders. So it's common to see a small arm bend, but we want to try to maintain as relatively straight of an arm as we can. So those are the 3 most common technical errors that take away from maximally challenging the abs. Now, we can build off that and we can start to look at a progression to get you crushing the ab wheel if you haven't been able to do it yet. Now, the first one that I like is what we call pulses. So we're gonna set up the same way. We're gonna get into that hip extended position. And now I'm just gonna do short motion. So as you do this, you're gonna be trying to keep as much of an engagement in that midsection as you possibly can, thinking to flex, extend your hips, and maintain as much tension in this region as you can, and having that shortened range. This will put more of a challenge in your trunk and a little bit less in your arms since they aren't going in that extended position. The next one that we can go to is gonna be a short range, long duration pause. So again, we're gonna start to build this out further and further, but we're trying to progressively do it in a way that doesn't overly challenge you and find a point that you can tolerate well. So to do that, the next step, we're gonna come out. We're gonna go to a spot where you feel challenged, but you can control, and we're gonna hold here. Generally somewhere between 6 and 10 seconds is a pretty good amount. And then you're gonna pull back in, catch your breath, go again. You're gonna do that for multiple reps, progressively working on longer duration holds, going further out, or more reps. And that way you accumulate more time under tension or just more total challenging tension in a lot of way to progress over time. So then, once you're getting pretty good with that, we can then go and start working on more range, but with a reduced effort. To do that, we're gonna go to the band assisted version. So what you need to do is set up to where you have it anchored or have a band anchored around something nice and sturdy. So again, you would normally use probably just 1 band if you have the standard ab wheel and you can hook it on there. I've got 2, so I'm gonna have 2 bands set up. And then you want this close enough. So the bands can run between your legs. And I'm gonna put these either A, onto my wrists, or better yet, onto the handles. So you can go here. And what this is gonna do, it's gonna reduce the total demand on my shoulders. So it's gonna make an easier time to go out and pull back in. So I'll be able to go out. And now you can work on doing more repetitions, going to a deep range. You can start to work on adding in those variations at a further distance that we talked about for the progression. So I could do pulses at a further out position. I could do long duration pauses. Lighting up those abs. And then start to work on having a lighter band, bringing my anchor point closer if I can, that way there's less assistance. And then eventually working to where you then take away the band, and now you're on the regular ab wheel rollout, and you just progress your way further and further out. So if you find you did the band assisted, you were crushing it, and you're ready to go without, and you start to go, and you can get to here and do it really well, and then you can come back in, that's fantastic. A common issue that some people will do is trying to go out further than they can, and then either A, falling down, or having to really arch to get back in. So you just want to go out as far as you can, maintain, and then come back in. And then you can just keep working further and further out. Now, if you don't have either A, these ab wheels, or the standard ab wheel, there's a few other ways that you can do this movement as well. So the first one is if you have a barbell, you can put it on some plates, and then you can go through the motion the same way. Smaller plates work a little bit better, lower to the ground, more challenging. And then you can go through all the same details that we said before. Works really well. If that's not gonna work for you, such as if you don't have a barbell, another good one that works is if you have a ball. So if you have some sort of ball like this, is an excellent option. The only detail is that you're obviously not gonna be able to grip it like we were. So what do you do instead? Well, you come out and you have your hands set up, and then you can go through, and instead of holding and rolling forward with your hands on it, you're gonna let your arms come into place. Not quite as challenging, but it's still a good option. And you can try to work on letting it go further and further out. If you don't have any of those, you can go to slider options. They can work okay, but they're not really good for it. It's a little bit more of an awkward motion. It can be really challenging, but it'll do the job. In a future video, we're gonna cover body saws, which are a good substitute if you don't have access to any of these things. Or you just wanna have a really challenging core exercise, it'll light you up. So, thank you for watching, really appreciate it. If you could hit that like button down below, it helps us out a ton. And if there's any other videos you want us to cover in the future, let us know in the comments. See you in the next video.